Welcome, friends! This is episode 12 of my Enigmatica 2 Expert Extended Playthrough series, and right away I have some good news to share. I have updated my pack to the latest current version, which is 1.2.1, and if you would like to take a look at the changelog of this version, you should go take a look at Enigmatica 2 Expert Extended Discord, the link is in the description, and the Modpack author, Crutoy242, has a pretty nice changelogs on his GitHub, with a lot of images and good descriptions of what happened. In the last episode, we have automated the starter metals, the iron, the copper, and the tin, and now I think we are ready to go back to the drawing board and take a look what's going on. As I mentioned a couple episodes ago, I would like to set myself a specific goal, like in this case I would like to create a spectral coil, then break this goal into smaller chunks, and then as I achieve these chunks I will set up various automation and system in place, and this is what actually helps me progress through the pack. So I don't automate things just for the sake of automation, I automate them to achieve something. So in this case, since the spectral planks are already set up, we have a spectral trees drawing. The next thing I would like to get is a shulker pearl. Shulker pearls could be collected by sifting through the crushed endstone, and so this means that we have to collect the endstone in large quantities. How are we going to get the endstone? Well, let's grab some sand and a linking tool and visit the astral sorcery structure, which is right there by my base. Presence of this structure was one of the reasons why I settled here, besides the view of course. And this is because the structure has a floating crystal right under it. If we take our sand and assemble it into the sandstone, and then place the sandstone in the beam of light which is coming from a floating crystal, we'll see these particle effects. And after 20 seconds, this sandstone will transform into the endstone. I would like to automate this by applied Energistics 2 mod, however, this mod chapter is currently locked behind the industrial foregoing gate. So let's quickly finish that gate and we'll get back to the industrial foregoing later, and for that we will need to craft a machine case, which is pretty easy to do. Now we can finish the industrial foregoing gate, collect our rewards, and switch to Conflux level 2, which allows us to load 10 chunks per world. And for those of you who do not know what that means, in the top left corner here there is a Claim Chunks button. If you click it, you'll see the map, and if you left click on the map, you can claim a specific area for yourself. This is mostly important for the server. However, if you shift left click around the area, you can select the area which always will be chunk loaded, even if you walk away far away from your base. And this is important because if you have the machines running and you want them to keep running while you are away, this is what you can do. Now let's open applied Energistics gate by crafting an inscriber. To do that, we will need a Fluix block which consists of the Fluix crystals. And the recipe for the Fluix crystals is quite interesting. You can throw charged Certus quartz, nether quartz, and redstone into the water and watch the transformation into the Fluix crystals occur. So let's craft ourselves an inscriber and take a look inside. Inscribers can be powered by a simple survivor generator, and they can be used for quite a lot of useful things, but in order to print circuits with them, we need some of these presses. And at the bottom here you can see all of the presses I have collected so far, and you can find them in the meteorite crush sites, which look like this. So I've collected most of them, but I'm still missing the calculation press. So I guess it's time for us to do some travel. And one thing I always bring for my travels is the bee smoker and some scoop, because we will need lots of bees in the future and I love to collect them. And when I do, I always check the bee name, and you see below it says ignoble stock. And ignoble stock are the bees which will die at some point, and the opposite is pristine stock, and you always want to stock up on the pristine stock princesses because they will never die. And here I harvested a second forest hive, and this time I got myself a forest drone and a valiant princess, which is much more rare chance to get that out of the forest hive, and also it is from pristine stock, which means it will never die on us. Also, the Valiant Princess, instead of producing a regular honeycombs, which you can centrifuge into the beeswax and honey, This produces a cocoa comb, which can be centrifuged into the beeswax, cocoa beans, and milk chocolate. Quite neat. And also in my travels, I pretty often pop into the astral sorcery structures, and these are pretty good to collect for marble, because these are good sources of marble, but then we also find loot chests, which are full of useful items. For example, this one has an ender pearl. And sometimes you also find weird things. For example, in this village here, I found a chest with 56 enchantment tables, and I'll grab them because enchantment tables are a good source of the Precantatio aspect for Thaumcraft. Sometimes I see things like this, the ice dragon on the mountain. I'm not sure I'm ready to engage the dragon now, but I'm definitely set up a mark on my map. Whenever I see a rabbit, unfortunately for them, I'm going to kill them. And the reason for it is that we are collecting the rabbit's foots, because this is something which we'll need to feed to the hippogriff if we want to tame one. This is quite a sight to see. A dragon, another dragon, and 2 astral sorcery structures nearby. This place is loaded. Finally, a meteorite crash site. Something what we've been looking for a long time. However, it is right next to the dragon lair, so we'll have to be careful. I dug a hole inside the meteorite, and the dragon is over there, and it hasn't seen me yet. So let's see what's inside the Sky and Stone chest. And it looks like we got the calculation press from our very first attempt. It is time to get back home. And the first order of business is, of course, to replicate the inscriber calculation press, so we have more than one. Now let's collect our reward for the quest and proceed to make a charger. The charger has pretty simple recipe, and if we place it down and power it from the top, and in this case make sure you power it from the top, we can then place a regular Certus quartz crystal in it. And then over time, this regular Certus quartz will become a charged one. The next thing on our quest line is to craft a fluid steel, which is quite easy to do but requires several steps. So first we need to create a fluix plated iron ingot, which we make in the inscriber, and for that we need 3 components. First we grind the skystone into dust. Then we get ourselves a couple tungsten ingots, and just to remind you, these tungsten ingots we can get from tungsten nuggets, which we get from fighting endermites. And then we need also craft carbonic fluix complex, which is a simple recipe again, but it requires some fluix dust, crushed black quartz dust, and finally the silicon. And at this point in the game, the silicon for us is easiest to get by taking nether quartz dust and smelting it in the oven. I will craft myself 8 of these ingots first. And burning them in the oven gets the quest done. Now that the fluid steel is complete, the next logical step is to craft the ME circuit etcher. And to do the circuit etcher, besides the components we already have, we'll need the Fluix logic unit, which requires engineering processor, but this is easy to craft inside the inscriber, and the formation core, which requires a logic processor, but this is also easy to craft in the inscriber. If you are using the device in order to craft the circuit etcher, always make sure you have the duplicates of each of the presses in the corner, because otherwise they will get used up and you will have to find another meteor site. Now that we have a ME circuit etcher, I have placed it behind this wall out of the way and powered it by 4 survival generators. And what this thing can do is quite awesome, because it is much faster than the inscriber. We can place the raw components of redstone, gold, and silicon in order to craft logic processors. But if we would use inscriber to craft this, you see that first we would need to do a printed logic circuit, then the printed silicon in the inscriber, and only then assemble these things together. and the circuit etcher is much faster because it uses the base components for the crafting. The next two quests I would like to tackle is the quest for the ME interface, which has a pretty simple recipe, and the quest for the ME chest, the main storage item of AE2 mod. And as I craft ME chest, I realized that we'll need a lot of these ME glass cables, which is one of the components of the chest. This is why I crafted myself a stack of them. Now that the initial quests are complete, let's take a look at some of the additional items which I positioned here in the corner that we will need for our endstone setup. And the first one is Energy Acceptor. And Energy Acceptor is a block in Applied Energistics 2 that allows us to provide energy to our setups. However, in order to craft it, we'll need some vacuum tubes, and vacuum tubes are made in the Engineer's Workbench. Engineer's Workbench is a part of Immersive Engineering questline and quite easy to craft. The vacuum copper tubes require copper wire, among other things, and will require the copper wire elsewhere, and because currently the best way for us to make the copper wire is from copper plates, and because we have automated copper elsewhere, I just dumped about 64 blocks of copper into the smeltery, and I'm starting this infinite copper plate production, so by the end of it we will have 9 stacks of copper plates. Here is how Immersive Engineering Workbench works. If you place all of the required components in and you have correct engineer's blueprint in the corner here, you can craft the vacuum tube like this. Here is our energy acceptor. We can place the energy acceptor next to the power source, then extend it with ME glass cable, and then we can put an item from AE2 mod, for example, ME chest. And as you can see, the chest is now powered. And without energy acceptor, you can see we cannot really connect the cable to the power sources. However, this ME chest currently, if we click on it, it says cannot read storage cell, and this is because there is none. Let's craft one. To do this, first we'll need to craft a 1K ME storage component, then an iron chest, and then we can combine this all together into ME storage cell. If we get back to our ME chest and we open it and place ME storage cell inside, you can see that the top of the chest lights up. If we open it, we'll see the inventory-like space inside where we can place items. If we put a stack of copper plates inside and take a look at our cell, it says that now 1 out of 63 types is getting used. So into that single cell, you can stick in 64 different types of materials, but then also it uses the space in the storage cell. And you can see right now single stack uses 16 out of 1024 bytes. If we place another stack of copper, you'll see that this number grows to 24 bytes. And then another stack, the number goes to 32 bytes. So this means that a stack of item is 8 bytes, which tells you that we can cram a huge amount of materials into this chest if they are just one single type. You can place any items you want in this chest, but for the purposes of what we are going to do next, we need to create a sort of a whitelist and restrict only a particular set of items that could go to the chest. And in order to do this, we need to craft a cell workbench. The recipe for the cell workbench looks simple enough. However, if we look into the calculation processor, we'll see that it requires a pure Certus quartz crystal. Well, the recipe for the pure Certus quartz crystal is just take a Certus quartz seed, throw it in the water, wait a little bit, and you'll get a pure Certus quartz crystal. That should be easy. Especially considering that our tin production has Certus quartz seed as byproduct, and we now have about 80 stacks of them. So let's take a couple. We can throw this in the water, and they will immediately start growing, and we know that something is happening to them because of these light blue bubbles appearing all around them, and the same bubbles don't appear around the regular items which are being thrown. So we know they are growing, but how long it will take to grow them? First time I did this, the growth was happening awfully slow. So I decided to see if anyone discussed this issue on the official Enigmatica 2 Expert Extended Discord. Yes, looks like you have to run the game for 12 in real life hours in order to grow these crystals. Looks like we need to find a better way. If you look at the recipe for the pure Certus quartz crystal in the JEI, you can find out that the process can be made faster by using crystal growth accelerators. The crystal growth accelerator has a pretty simple recipe. However, if we look at the uses of it, we'll see that we can combine 6 of them to create this crystal growth chamber. Once we craft the chamber, we need to place it down on the energy acceptor, and this is the first block we encountered, which cannot be powered in any other way. So now that it is powered, we can put the Certus quartz seeds inside, and you can see that the seeds starting growing. At some point, the energy runs out, just like now, and we are stuck at 30%. And the reason being is that just 3 measly survival generators are not enough to power this. So let's capitalize on the fact that we have built our base in the extreme hills and progress a little bit through the immersive engineering chapter toward the windmill. First, we'll need to build a kinetic dynamo, which has a pretty simple recipe, and this copper coil block over here requires LV wire coils, and now that we have a bunch of copper plates, making wires is not a problem. With the kinetic dynamo out of the way, we can get our reward and look into the next quest, which is a quest for the windmill. The windmill blades require quite a lot of treated wood planks and treated sticks. However, our automated coke oven setup was producing the treated wood for a pretty long time, so we have an extra. We can produce a stack of windmill blades and quickly turn them into the windmills. I decided to spend quite a bit of steel in order to build a steel scaffolding to attach our windmills, and as an added bonus we can actually climb the scaffolding and get on the top of our windmill farm and adjust stuff. And one thing we can do to improve our windmills is to craft a windmill sail, and this can be done from the tough fabric, which is made from industrial hemp. And in order to do this, I have built this usual setup where I use farmer from Actually Additions and power that farmer with a couple survival generators. And within about 20 minutes, I have managed to collect about 40 stacks of industrial hemp fibers. And the reason it worked is because I jump-started the farm with this Supremium watering can. As you can see, as soon as you start watering the plants, they grow with ridiculous rates. Once we have 24 of these sails, we can climb back up and simply right-click with the sails on the windmill, and the sails get attached. And as you can see, the rotation speed of the windmill with the sails is much faster, and the energy generation for the wheel with the sails will be higher as well. So let's attach the sails to the rest of the windmills. And after putting the sails on all of our windmills, I have also attached several capacitors to harvest the power from the windmills and daisy chain them using the insulated LV wire. And as you can see, I can walk through this LV wire, but if we would use the regular LV wire, non-insulated one, and we walk into it, we are getting zapped with electricity. The wire then comes down from our steel scaffolding tower down into this LV capacitor below. I have attached all of the applied Energistics 2 mod items we have discussed so far to this capacitor, and now that the crystal growth chamber is powered, we can grow pure Certus quartz crystals without a problem of running out of power. And once the crystals are done, we can proceed with crafting the calculation processor, which finally gives us access to the cell workbench. Cell workbench can be used to configure what types of items ME storage cells can handle. For example, if we want to configure this storage cell to hold only sandstone, we can do it like this, and then we can also configure another one to handle, for example, only N stone. In order for us to understand how partition storage cell work, let's craft a single ME annihilation plane and attach it to the network that contains this storage chest with a simple non-partition storage cell in it. Given the power and a place to store items on the network, ME annihilation plane quickly collects all the blocks in front of it and deposits them into our chest. But if we replace the regular storage cell with the one partition to store only the N stone, when we place the N stone in front of the annihilation plane, it quickly gets collected into the chest. But if we put the sandstone, As you can see, it is not collected, and this is because there is no place on the network to store the sandstone. Such approach gives us the possibility to whitelist what sort of the items a ME annihilation plane can collect, but in order to benefit from automated block collection, we need to also automate the block placement. So let's look into the ME formation plane. As opposed to the annihilation plane, the formation plane has an interface to it. Here we have a whitelist. For example, if we place the sandstone, this will mean the formation plane can be placing sandstone. Then we can also switch between how it will interact with the world. For example, it can place the sandstone as a block or drop it as an item. So let's select the block placement. And then if we place the sandstone in front of the annihilation plane, it is getting broken and immediately is replaced by the formation plane. Also here we can switch the priority. For example, if we set priority to the -1 and our ME chest over here has the priority of 0, then if we place the blocks, they are getting broken and immediately deposit inside the ME chest instead of being placed in front of the formation plane. But what if we want to extract the sandstone from the chest and deposit it in the world using the formation plane? As you can see, if we simply set the priority on the formation plane to be 10 and the priority on the chest to be 0, the items are still not extracted from the chest. There is a way to fix it though, and for that we can use ME interface and ME import bus. ME interface is a block that acts as an interface between the network and the outside world. If we go in here and configure, for example, ME interface to grab one sandstone from the network, then the ME interface basically goes into the chest and grabs one piece of sandstone. And now to the outer world, this is just an inventory, and we can grab the items out of here directly, as you can see, and the amount of the items in the ME chest just decreases. And since this ME interface acts just like an inventory, I can put the ME import bus over here, and I can connect the import bus to the formation plane via the glass cable. We can configure the ME import bus by right-clicking on it, and here we can place the sandstone inside. So now this import bus can import from the ME interface's inventory the sandstone into this subnetwork, and I call this subnetwork because the network between the import bus and the formation plane is not in any way, shape or form connected to our network, which includes our ME chest, and therefore it is also unpowered because it is not connected to the energy acceptor. In Applied Energistics 2, there is a very cool way to keep these two subnetworks separated in terms of the data they transfer, but still use the same energy source from this energy acceptor, and that is by the using of the quartz fiber. If we place a piece of quartz fiber over here and then connect to networks via the glass cable, as you can see, this subnetwork now gets power and it outputs the sandstone over here. And this sandstone, once imported from the bus, it doesn't go back into the chest like in our previous example and gets placed because these networks here are not connected in terms of the data, because the quartz fiber is only able to transfer the energy and not the data. So now let's put all of this knowledge together and consider this very simple network consisting of the three subnets. The first subnet contains this ME chest with the sandstone. It's connected to the ME interface. The second subnet extracts the items through the import bus from the ME interface and sends them over to the formation plane to be placed in the center here. And the third subnet contains ME annihilation plane connected to this ME chest, which is partitioned to only hold the endstone. All three subnetworks are powered by the singular energy acceptor, and as you can see, there are three quartz fibers over here, here, and here that break connections between the three subnets in terms of the data transfer, but still allow them to be powered by the single energy acceptor. So now let's go into the ME interface and instruct it to extract the endstone from the chest. Immediately the sandstone got deposited in the center here and the transformation started to happen. Let's wait until the sandstone transforms into the endstone. And as you can see, the ME annihilation plane did the short work of the sandstone, and it got deposited into our ME chest over here. This setup takes exactly 20 seconds to produce a piece of the endstone, and that might seem like a long time, but for what we require the endstone for, this rate will be actually fine for now. There is another place that could benefit from a similar approach, and this is our living rock and living wood production. We can reimagine the same setup like this. Again, we are using 3 subnets, and in this case I have replaced the regular daisy to the floating one. And if we put the infused wood and arcane stone over here, they are getting deposited around the daisy and the transformation is getting started. This setup takes slightly more energy than the one which transforms the sandstone into the endstone, and this is just because now we use a couple annihilation planes, a couple formation planes, and a couple invert buses. Therefore, I had to attach 5 survival generators to this energy acceptor, but other than that, this setup is the same, and in this case we are using the partitioned storage cell, which is partitioned to only take the living rock and the living wood. But going back to our endstone production, we actually do this to be able to produce a shulker pearls, and for that we need to sieve our endstone. And unfortunately we cannot sieve using a regular mesh, we need a flint stiffened mesh. The flint stiffened mesh is produced in the field projector from compact machines, and it requires a basic catalyst, which is an easy recipe of advanced alloy and 4 basic components which we can already make. However, it also requires these 16 blocks of compressed flint, and that will be 144 flint. And even though it gets us 3 stiffened meshes, we still need to figure out a way to make lots of flint. One of the ways to make flint is to use a crushing block, and the mechanics is this: you throw a piece of gravel, then you put the crushing block up top, and as you can see, it crushes that gravel into some flint. But of course, we wouldn't want to do this by hand, and so I have built this simple contraption over here in order to help us. If I flip this lever to on, the sticky piston will start moving the crushing block, and after it gets moved, the crushing block will fall back down. So if we put some gravel inside this wooden storage crate, the crushing block will crush the gravel, and the enter hopper over there will pick up the gravel and deposit it into the crate below it. If we look behind, then this system has very simple redstone circuit, which has just 2 items over here, and to show how they work, I have expanded it. So when I flip the same lever as over there, this timer will generate a signal every 2 seconds, every 40 ticks. The signal will travel to the sequencer, which will generate a positive second signal for 28 ticks and a negative signal for 12 more ticks, keeping this lamp on for some time and then shutting it off for a short while. In order to make this setup look cleaner, I have moved it downstairs, and I've hidden most of the redstone circuits behind this wall. And now also the redstone lever doubling down for blocking the extracting conveyor belt from working. So once I put the gravel in, as you can see, it's not moving out until I flip the lever. And once I do, the crushing continues. Once all the gravel gets crushed, we get a bunch of flint in our chest, and also, interestingly enough, we get some thing which is called nothing. It's also from mechanics mod, and apparently when you crush things, sometimes you get nothing, and this nothing accumulates in this crate, and potentially we could arrange for this nothing to get deleted automatically. However, at this point we're not producing as many items so that it is needed. At this point you might be asking, where do I get this much gravel? Well, over here, right next to our stone generating setup, I have set up another cobblestone generator, but this time it is connected to the compacting drawer, and that allows us automatically really quickly create a double compressed cobblestone. If we grab a stack of it, we can turn it into the 7 triple compressed cobblestones. If you remember, in episode 5, we have built this skystone sledgehammer, and we have added the smashing 2 modifier to it. So now that we smash these triple compressed cobblestones, We can get so much gravel it cannot even fit our inventory. Couple other things besides compressed flint we need for the flint stiffened mesh are the grains of infinity, which we get by setting the bedrock on fire, and the flux, which is obtained by crushing redstone with an obsidian next to the bedrock again. And so in order to get both, I have dug this channel which goes down to the bedrock level. And one cool thing I wanted to point out is that if you use elevators block, you can actually put two elevators block between any number of solid blocks and you can still easily travel through. So this is what I've done. And so let's place our obsidian down, then throw some redstone below it and left click. As you could see, we could convert any number of the redstone stacks into the flux. And so we don't need this process to get automated. As for starting fires to get grain of infinity, we will automate it at some point, but as of now we can just do this quickly and wait a little bit for the grains of infinity to show up. Now that we have the materials, let's craft some basic components and turn them into the basic catalyst. But before we begin the multi-block miniaturization, I would like to show you something. In the episode 8 of my playthrough, I already touched on the Enigmatica mod when I was building Astral Sorcery structure, but this time I would like to bring you to the key bindings in my crafts option and show you how I created key binds for a couple buttons in the Enigmatica mod. Specifically the loading schematic and manipulating it if you want to craft it. However, there is also a save schematic button and you need this one if you want to create a brand new schematic for yourself. And also I've keybinded the toggle printer and toggle rendering buttons. So let me show you how it works. Here we have the structure from the recipe, and in order to save it we have to press the save schematic button we keybinded earlier, and then we need to select the red point and the blue point as the corners of our schematic. We can then adjust these corners to fit the structure tightly. Once we are done, we can type the name into the bottom right corner and click save. Now if we need to place the structure into the world, all we need to do is press the load schematic button, find our schematic in a list, click done, and the schematic appears in place. Next thing we can do is enable the printer, and next, as soon as we come close to the schematic, the blocks are placed here automatically. All we need to do now is to flip the switch and throw in our basic catalyst. We have the mesh and the endstone is being produced, so we would be almost ready to sieve, except in order to sieve we actually need to use the crushed endstone instead of a regular one. And to make the crushed endstone, we'll actually have to use a compressed hammer onto the double or better triple compressed endstone to speed up the crushing. And so I have put this very simple export bus in which I place the endstone, and it exports into the compacting drawer from our ME chest, as you can see. So now the endstone is getting into the double compressed endstone automatically. In order to do the sifting, I have added another layer to our sifting building, and here I have built a much smaller setup which contains just 7 water wheels, and this is because we don't need too many shulker pearls and we don't have too much endstone anyway. And so here we can add our meshes to the sifters. Here is how this portion of the setup is supposed to work. If we place the double compressed endstone and then break it with a hammer, we will create this crushed endstone, which will be automatically inserted into this drawer through the use of the ender hopper. Similar to the all other sifting systems in this building, this system is connected to the XNet controller on the first floor through the use of the XNet cables. However, the difference from other systems is that I'm using drawer controller to distribute the outputs into these basic drawers. And the reason I'm doing that is I reached to the point where I cannot craft too many blue connectors anymore because they require carbon plates that in turn require coal. And I actually ran out of coal and I need to do more mining, and so therefore for now I will just save on connectors and use the drawer controller. I will prime my system by placing some of the crushed sandstone into the sifters, sifting them for the outputs, and then setting up these basic drawers in order to lock them up so that they can accept only one type of the item. After locking the drawers, I have set 2 item filters with the items we are going to be collecting to split the work between 2 range collectors, and this is because the outputs of a crushed stone are quite numerous, so I wanted to speed things up, but as I was putting the range collectors, I noticed that the range collectors actually use ender pearls, and we are getting low on these as well. So it looks like in the next episode we'll have to expand our stockroom with more items. If we look at our controller real quick, we'll see that we can support all 3 sifters we're using in this building, and the controller itself is a very complex system with a bunch of machines, energy producing devices, liquid generated devices, all connected to this controller, and we still have channels 4 and 5 empty currently. So this tells you that this controller is a great system where you can get the most bang out of your buck and connect so many things with just one device. Now that we have all of the connections enabled in the controller, all we have to do is place our blocks down and then use our sledgehammer to break this double compressed sandstone. When a stone falls, it will be only connected by the ender hopper over there, and nothing will be collected by the collectors because we have whitelisted the only items that can go in the drawers. And after the items get sifted, they will be collected by the collectors and deposited in the drawers. I wanted to note that the red particles you see when the items are getting sifted are coming from the ender hopper, and the reason is ender hopper cannot collect any items, it cannot immediately deposit into the storage below, so the item which is not white filtered in the range collector and not white filtered in the ender hopper will not be ever collected, which is great for the system like this. We have about 13 stacks of crushed sandstone to go through, but we already have collected 18 shulker pearls. So we can proudly pat ourselves on the back and cross out shulker pearls from our progress board. If we look at the crafting grid, we are missing just one ingredient to be able to craft the spectre coil, and this is a conglomerate of coal, which in turn requires bituminous peat to craft. So in the next episode, you should definitely expect me to go into the forestry and ender pearls and peat production, as well as hopefully finishing the spectre coils for that sweet free accessible energy. I am really grateful for all of the genuine comments I'm getting from you, and so I wanted to mention that though I get very busy at work recently, I am still very excited about this series, and I try to clear up my work queue to make the episodes more regular. Another announcement I wanted to make, that I was invited by another awesome YouTube creator by the name Loonsloon to do a modded live multiplayer playthrough on a game called Project Zomboid. And even though I'm not streaming it on my channel, I thought that some of you could be interested in this. So please at the very least check out the awesome trailer we have put together for the series. The links will be in the description and in the ending card for this video. Thank you all so much for being a great audience, really appreciate sharing the joy of this awesome pack with you, and I will see you all next time. Same place.